Hello, AgCom 400. Today we are going to be going over strategic planning, specifically related to the workplace and getting stuff done. That's kind of the whole point behind a strategic plan. And I know for some of you that have been in the workplace before, strategic planning might be a dirty word. So before we move on, I wanted to see what our good friend Dilbert has to say about strategic planning. So I love some of these here. Here's my project timeline. The work portion will take 1 week. I'll spend 3 weeks meeting with people whom you send to me because you don't feel like I'm talking to them yourself. I'll spend 8 weeks getting competitive bids from companies that I know I won't select. 6 weeks to get the wisdom and approval of executives who are too busy to understand the issues. During that time, you will randomly reorganize the department and cut my funding. In the final phase, I leap to my death in bitter and broken shell of a man. Is there some sort of manager thing I should be doing now? If I time my leap right, you will be just leaving the building. Let's see some other ones. I estimated the project timeline by assuming that everyone involved will waste 1 week. That's a stupid way to do a timeline. Set up a meeting, and I'll show you how it's supposed to be done. He's available in a week. They keep coming. Our competitors just made our new 5-year plan moot. While we were strategizing, they were doing something I believe they call work. On the plus side, I managed to salvage some joy by mocking you. Whatever you're doing, stop it. And our project plan will follow the usual arc. Phase 1 will be unwarranted optimism supported by delusions of competence. In Phase 2, the obstructionists will slither out of their layers and try to smother our dreams. Ignorance and envy will fuel rumors that get repeated until they morph into common knowledge. Resources will be allocated based on misinformation and favoritism. And requirements will drift until the project is both undesirable and impossible. That brings us to the second week. And I want my unwarranted optimism back. And I put together a project timeline. I started by reasoning that anything I don't understand is easy to do. Phase 1, design a client-server architecture for our worldwide operations. Time, 6 minutes. And I found some numbers that support your strategic plan. I had to take the square root of a negative to do it. The timeline is on this Mobius strip. Good work. So, there are obviously some stigmas out there about strategic planning, and having been part of many strategic planning teams in my previous work experience, I say there is an element of truth to them, that a lot of times it does follow some of those things that Dilbert was poking fun at and obviously taking to the extreme. But they are essential for a lot of places, and they can be absolutely vital for you getting your own goals or a small group's goals as you move up through the ladder of your work. So here are the objectives for today. We're going to describe 3 steps to strategically planning a project, and we're going to identify timeline tools to keep track of your strategic plan. So those are objectives. That's where we're going. So let's get there. Why would you strategically plan? It is true that it does take a little bit of time out of your day or out of your week to pool some resources together to create a plan. And I think that is one of the criticisms that a lot of people have, is people could be working, instead they're planning. However, I think we can all agree who've been in the workplace that miscommunication can happen and project expectations can happen. And if things aren't on a deadline, that, you know what, sometimes they don't get done. So the goal of a strategic plan is to put in a little bit of time to save a lot of time on the back end. And this is going to allow you to produce higher quality documents and presentations. So there are some steps to strategic planning. The very first one is to set your objectives. You need to know where you're going before you ever get there. And that's the purpose of your objectives. Create a task list, and lastly, create a timeline. So let's dive into these a little bit deeper. Step 1, setting your objectives. The very first thing you want to do is brainstorm. A lot of people in group settings are reluctant to speak up because they think an idea might not be formed and they might be judged because of it. But the very important thing about this is you just write. I call it a brain dump. And in previous teams, we just wrote everything on our individual papers. I either shared them in a group or went and individually wrote them on a whiteboard. And this is a good way just to get all the information, all the ideas out there. And create a list of any possible objectives related to the project. Once again, The project goal is the ultimate thing here, so what are the objectives that are related to it? And keep writing. Once again, don't stop this phase. You just keep writing and see kind of what comes out of it. And then from this, you'll set your objectives and identify the top ranked objective. And this is usually the primary goal to the project that you are creating your strategic plan for. And you're going to create a purpose statement to keep you on track. And you might think that this is a wasted step or just unneeded planning, but honestly, the primary goal can be incredibly important because you revert back to that throughout this process. And it helps to identify if you are getting sidetracked. And if you see you're getting sidetracked, is it good for good reason, or is it because you're missing the boat on the top ranked objective? So this top ranked objective, the TRO, is the most vital aspect, the objective that is key to the whole plan. And then step 3, you're going to create a task list and a timeline. So after you've identified the top ranked objective, put the rest of the objectives onto a task sheet. And take a look at your book, and you can organize them either linearly or through mapping. I personally am a very linear person. I like making maps, but I honestly don't get much out of them. I always revert to more of a linear model. That helps me personally. But if the mapping would work for you, definitely look at that. So take a look at the example in the book on linear mapping, on linear task lists and mapping. So on creating a timeline, the timeline is incredibly important. You'll always hear some quotes like dreams or goals without timelines are simply dreams. And timelines make things happen, and they hold everyone accountable, not just you. So your coworkers, your peers, people you're working on a project in class from, timelines help keep them accountable for work that needs to be accomplished. So you're going to create a timeline and then share it with others. Could either be through office email servers or using online sources like what we'll go to in a little bit. Then you're also going to want to schedule meetings periodically as the timeline progresses. Now, some of the biggest things that I've seen when we schedule meetings in the past was scheduling meetings just for the sake that we felt like we were scheduling meetings. And that can be an incredible waste of time. And people get a little bitter that we're meeting just for the sake of meeting when we can actually get things done. So when you do schedule meetings that coincide with the timeline, make sure there is a point and make sure everyone understands the point of the meeting. Because honestly, if there's no point for the meeting, people could just be getting their work done. And that's what they want to do. And use online sources and software to help guide this. I personally have all my computers and my wife's computers and our phones sync together. So we have timelines on projects that we work with on the business that we run. So that is a very important part, is we have timelines that we can share and we both update together, and it notifies us of progress on certain projects. One of the things that I would like to point out is something called the Gantt chart. Now, all of you have probably heard of Google Docs and how they have calendars out there, and Outlook has calendars. And the Gantt chart, I like it because it's both linear and it's visual. So what this is it just lists out the activities and then it creates a timeline. So this is a very, very simple Gantt chart. And this just kind of helps get an idea of where we're standing on things. And you can either mark the boxes that have been completed, write your initials, put an X mark in what's been completed, or whatever your office or you decide personally. But this is a way that really helps me kind of focus on some things. This is a very simple one, but you can also make them a little more in depth, and you can include different phases. So for example, this is one that lasts a little over a year, and you can take a look at, they have a key and everything specifically laid out, and color. I think color definitely helps us as well. So if you want to use a Gantt chart for any projects you're working on, you can easily Google these online. There's plenty of Excel files, or you can make your own Excel file, but this is a good way to visually represent the timeline that's being created in a way for marking off what's been accomplished and what isn't. So if it's mid-2010, it can kind of let you know what's ahead and what you should have accomplished by now based on the initial meetings. So really quick lesson today, but just let's review. So although strategic planning can take some time in the beginning, it can save you time if it's done correctly. Once again, don't just create a plan because you need to feel like you need to create a plan. Create a plan because it's going to give you direction and hold people accountable. Create a timeline with expectations. That can help everyone be on the right page and be held accountable. Once again, timelines are vital, but clear expectations of every member in the group, including yourself, are also very vital. And I'll also share the project timeline and deadlines with others via technology. People should have these readily accessible so they know where they need to be and where they know where their peers are working too. So that's about it. I've listed the discussion questions below on the blog, and have a great day.